Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Adam from Rescue Michigan. And how is everyone doing tonight? As you might be able to tell from the audio, I am still up north, not in the usual location. Audio not the greatest, but this is at least better than it was when I was in Marquette 2 nights ago. At least I have a reliable internet signal. I look blurry on the screen for some reason. It's probably my lousy laptop camera. And yeah, I don't have my usual audio hardware, so you'll be hearing my breathing, my dog's breathing, cars going by, but we make the best of what we have. And, it's a great night tonight. I couldn't not do a stream since it's Liz Cheney firing night, folks. It's happening. It's happening right now. So we want to talk about that a little bit and celebrate. I mentioned on the short stream I did on Friday, I want to do more of these like short streams where I just talk about one topic, one kind of short thing. And what I want to talk about tonight, because we'll all be cheering and applauding as Liz Cheney gets crushed by the Wyoming voters. But I also want to talk about what the heck is going on in Alaska. Because what we're not hearing much about is the political fate of Senator Lisa Murkowski, who also voted for Trump's impeachment. Robin Losey says, hey, hello, Adam. I hope you're having a great vacation. Thank you, Robin. I'm having a great vacation. I am now in Ontonagon. I am going farther and farther from home. I hiked around Lake of the Clouds today. It was absolutely gorgeous. The weather has been perfect the entire time. As you can see, I'm in a better place with the lighting, but still obviously not ideal. But I will be heading home soon. We talked earlier on Tuesday about I got to get this flyer done for the ballot proposals. And I'm sorry to report, folks, it is really, really hard to do work when you're on vacation. So I'm still trying to get some things done on it. I'll hopefully have it done as soon as possible, but I'm going to spend one more day up here and then I'm going to head back and get back to work. So, yeah, we will have that done as soon as possible. I know I still get text when my phone drifts back into a place where there's signal from people saying, hey, Adam, I need this and this and this. I'm like, I'm sorry. It's going to take another couple of days. 22 Guru says, what's up, Mount Pleasant, Michigan here. Mount Pleasant has to have been named as a joke because if any of you have ever been to Mount Pleasant, it is like dead flat. There is not even a hill in Mount Pleasant, but yeah, still a nice place, I guess. But Ontonagon has one of the closest things to mountains in Michigan. There's not very many of them, but there is a nice little miniature range here. Nothing like what you get, obviously, in Colorado or even in the Appalachians, but I love mountains. It's the thing I really dislike about where I live in Michigan is just how flat it is. There's something so majestic about mountains. I love climbing them. But anyway, all right, it's going to be a short stream tonight, folks. I don't want to, and as much as I want to be self-indulgent and tell you guys all about my vacation, people are going to be watching this 6 months from now or something, and this is all going to be small talk. So let's just get right to it. Right now in the polls, let me just refresh the page I have up just to see if there's any updates on the election results in Wyoming. 6% in, and Harriet is it HAY-guh-man? 57% to Liz Cheney, 41%. So as long as those figures hold, Liz Cheney is getting blown out. So cheers to that. I don't know if there's any need for me to really elaborate on why we should all be rooting for Liz Cheney's demise. I saw this ridiculous piece in the Washington Post published earlier today called "The Winning Defiance of Liz Cheney" by some establishment lady who I guess used to write for the Detroit Free Press, Newsweek, Daily Beast, Vogue magazine, and it's just slurp, slurp, slurp. I mean, it's embarrassing. But never mind all that. Liz Cheney's getting beat, and she's getting beat because she has been a leading figure in burning the Constitution and impeaching Trump. And now, of course, even more recently with the January 6th committee leading the political lynch mob and putting the bipartisan patina on it that the uniparty establishment needed, because even the GOP in the House would not allow her to be on that committee. But they broke all the rules and they put her on the committee anyway, which is why the entire January 6th committee is unlawful. Doug Davis says establishment was begging Democrats to switch parties just to vote for her safer. Yes, they did. We're going to talk about that tonight. That's actually what I want to get to. But first, I want to talk about the situation in Alaska, which is very different. And what Alaska is doing for the first time this year, I believe, is using a system called Instant Runoff Voting, which was also recently implemented in Maine. So I want to talk about what this is because it's very, very confusing for people. They don't know what it is or how it works or what the agenda is behind it. So we're going to look at instant runoff voting and how that all works in Alaska. And then from there, talk about how there's all of these strange schemes to change the rules of an election in a way that may, at first blush, seem more honest and neutral. And then also talk about the shortcomings of our own system in Michigan, which we saw firsthand in the primary, where we had Illinois Representative Adam Kinzinger, lame duck who opted to retire rather than even try to face the voters in Illinois, spending, I believe, $250,000 urging Democrats to vote in Michigan's Republican primary with very little to show for it, thankfully, but it didn't have to be that way. So let's first off start by talking about Alaska. Why is it that the pundits are all saying Lisa Murkowski is going to be able to keep her seat? And the reason is because of this thing called instant runoff voting. So what is instant runoff voting? Well, at first blush, it's just a runoff that is instantaneous. And what that means is when you go to vote, what you do is rather than vote for one candidate for one seat, which is what, of course, we're all familiar with, you have a ranked choice system. And the way it works is that they do an instant runoff where first they rank, they say, okay, how many people voted for so and so for each of the candidates for their first choice? And whoever has the fewest, they disqualify. And for all of the people who voted for that candidate, the lowest scoring candidate for their first choice, their vote now applies to their second choice. And so on it goes, where the last ranked voter gets dropped out. And then whoever voted for that person, then they get their next vote to count. So let's look at this. This might be easier to see visually. And and by the way, in Alaska, it's also even weirder than that. This is not happening tonight. The way it works in Alaska is they have first a jungle primary and then an instant runoff in November, which is totally bizarre. Jungle primary and then instant runoff. So what'll happen tonight is the top 4 vote getters go on to the November ballot. And then in November, they have an instant runoff. Clear as mud? Probably. So here's what's going to happen tonight. And actually, apparently it won't happen tonight. I was watching Tucker, and then I usually switch off of Sean Hannity the instant he comes on, but I just want to hear what he was going to start in with about Liz Cheney. And he mentioned Alaska is saying they're not going to have the results of the primary for weeks, which is kind of weird when you think about it, that you have an instant runoff, but somehow the results aren't known instantly. They say they're going to take weeks, which anytime an election, they say it's going to take weeks to know the results. You know there's a scam going on. But it shouldn't take weeks, especially if machines are counting the votes, right? They should be able to tabulate them in just as much time. Oh, they gotta compute 1, 2, 3, or 4 versus 0 or 1. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But that's what apparently they're saying in Alaska. But never mind that for now. 4 of the top vote getters will go to the November ballot. So that will presumably be Kelly Chewbacca. That's the Republican, that's the Trump endorsed candidate to oust Lisa Murkowski. There's Lisa Murkowski herself, the incumbent Republican. There's someone who's the Democrat nominee or the Democrat preference candidate. I don't even know who that is. And there's someone else. Some also ran. Might be a third party candidate, a Green, a Libertarian, or whatever. But someone who's going to clearly come in last. The 3 are going to be the most popular Democrat, Lisa Murkowski, and Kelly Chewbacca. So here's how that kind of looks. Let me pull this up on the screen. I have to actually switch off of StreamYard so I can look at this on my own screen too. So imagine you have an instant runoff ballot. And this is in November. So you've got 4 candidates. And let's say they are Joe Patriot, Mitt Rhino, Alexandria Ocasio-Castro, and Jane also ran, which is basically what the November ballot will look like in Alaska. So, what you do instead of voting for one candidate is you rank your choices. And you rank all of them except for the last one, because the last one doesn't matter, because obviously that's one that counts the least. You only your top choice counts. And if you have 4 candidates, you have at most 3 rounds of voting. So whoever you vote for 4th place wouldn't make a difference, as if not voting for them at all. Now, when you vote, you can vote for less than 4. You can vote for or less than 3. You can vote for up to 3. So if you want, you can vote for just Joe Patriot and not anybody else. You can do that. But all that would that mean is if your candidate comes in last and there's no lesser preference, then your vote's just discarded. Your candidate lost. So let's say you're obviously, if you're a conservative, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to vote for Joe Patriot number 1. And if Joe Patriot gets disqualified, maybe you disagree, and I may disagree. But most average Republican voters will say, well, I'll vote for the Rhino over the Democrat and the other person I haven't even heard of, so whatever. That's what your average Patriot ballot will look like in Alaska. So how does that end up working when they go to tabulate the votes? Here's how. So let's say in round 1, almost nobody votes for the also ran, or 5% vote for the Libertarian Party or whatever. So also ran is eliminated. And now whoever voted for the also ran, now their vote gets to apply to their second choice. Now, from the perspective of the Libertarian Party, the Natural Law Party, the Green Party, whatever, this is a good thing, because now you're not wasting your vote voting for the third party candidate, right? Because now your second choice vote will count, even if your candidate comes in last. But that also depends on, first of all, how many libertarians or third party people there are. That's actually one of the arguments for instant runoff voting, by the way, is this is good for the third parties. But when you have, number 1, in Alaska, a jungle primary where the top 4 vote getters are all that even makes it to the final round, and number 2, you have a rhino in the race, then now the calculation goes completely differently. So let's say, the Libertarian second choice is a Republican, the Green second choice is a Democrat. You get to round 2. Now everybody's either on the conservative side or the liberal side. So what do you end up with? Let's suppose, for the sake of argument, and it could go differently, but this is the calculation that Lisa Murkowski is counting on. And by the way, folks, if you haven't seen this, let me pull this up first. Hold on. I want to pull this up. By the way, people in the chat saying, did Liz Cheney lose yet? Did she lose? The last time I looked a few minutes ago, only 6% of the vote was in, but she was losing. She was losing bad. And all the experts are saying she's going to lose. So at the end of the stream, we'll look again. But yeah, Liz Cheney's losing. But anyway, let me take this off for right now. And I want to show you guys this. I just got to pull it up. It's going to take a second here. This Project Veritas story. They actually had an operative go in and expose Lisa Murkowski's people engineering instant runoff voting for her benefit. Why is it not on their homepage? Hold on, let me pull this up. Let me try doing a Google search. I don't know why it's not on Project Veritas's homepage. Maybe they're getting hit with some kind of defamation or something. Let's see here. Project Veritas Murkowski. Okay, here we go. All right, let me just play this clip. On the article, where's the video? Okay, here we go. All right. Let me add this back to the stream. Hold on, I gotta reshare the screen. Sorry for the dead air. This is the result of lack of planning. Uh-oh. Hold on. Okay, when I go full screen, it loses the video. So let me just play it like this. Are you guys seeing this, or is it frozen? Hey, chat, let me know real quick. Was that playing for you okay? Frozen? Okay. All right. Here, let me try this again. Sorry. Sorry, folks. Streamer issues. Try this again. Share screen. Let me try sharing Brave tab. Maybe that will fix it.
In Alaska, overall, it helps if you're more progressive because it expects more moderate candidate. And between you and me, ballot measure 2 was actually created. I think it was created for 2 reasons. Number one, it was created because there were people in the state who wanted to see a better system, but they also wanted Lisa to get reelected. And the big thing that's going to get more progressive elected, it was the 2 other portions, the ranked choice voting and the open primaries.
And actually, so our comms director, his name is Shay. He was the comms director for Ballot Measure 2. That was his job previously, so that's how we know him.
I would just talk to Shay, honestly, just about his experience with Ballot Measure 2 and voting reform. I would limit your conversation to just that because it's probably not appropriate to discuss anything else. And
because he works with the campaign.
Yeah.
So he can't say too much.
Mm-hmm. And like I can't say too much, but I trust you.
Would you say this ballot measure 2 definitely gives her a better chance for the primary?
I think that she is definitely going. I mean, if the system were different, I can't say whether or not this has benefited her. I will say, like, it benefits coalition style candidates, and she's definitely a coalition style candidate.
I know a lot of people who are working on Ballot Measure 2. I don't think Shay's ever worked for Senator Murkowski, but I know a lot of other people who worked on that did have worked for Senator Murkowski. So Calandra and Associates, they're a consultant that works for the campaign right now. They worked on Ballot Measure 2, and the founder and one of the employees, Rachel and Jackson, they are both former Murkowski staffers. Ron.
All right, well, you guys get the idea. You can watch the whole thing at Project Veritas. So they showed that the entire operation to create instant runoff voting in Alaska was a campaign operation to colluding with Lisa Murkowski's staff. That's what that's all about. So here's how the results of that hypothetical election play out. So let's say you now have a scenario where of the Republicans, the actual Republican voters, let's say 3-2, which is a huge win majority in an ordinary election. 60% of the Republicans support the Patriot candidate, which in this case would be Kelly Chewbacca, and then the Rhino, Lisa Murkowski, for their second choice. They don't vote for the Democrat for the first or second choice. And then again, this is after the All-Star was eliminated. 40% of the Republicans vote for the Rhino over the Patriot. And again, ordinary huge win. What we're seeing in Wyoming right now, it's about 3-2. That's a big 60-40 might not sound huge. That's a huge win margin. But now let's say on the Democrat side, 70% of the Democrats are normal Democrats, so they vote for the person that is the Democrat. But then for their second choice, they say, well, Lisa Murkowski is a lot more moderate than that Trump-endorsed Kelly Chewbacca. I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. It sounds almost like Chewbacca, but whatever. But let's say 30% of the Democrats are more clever and maybe directed by people like Adam Kinzinger. And they say, we're a 55% Republican state. It's going to be a Republican year. The Republican's going to win no matter what, as they were telling people in Michigan in certain districts. So 30% of the Democrats say, we're going to vote for Lisa Murkowski first. And then we'll vote for the Democrat for our second choice. So let's assume the split is 55 Republican, 45 Democrat, which is, by the way, what the margin for Trump was in Alaska in 2020. How does that break out? Well, you multiply the Republican scores by 0.55 because they got 55% of the vote, and the Democrats by 0.45 because they got 45% of the vote. So in round 2, Patriot gets 32% of the votes from the Republicans and 0% of the vote for the Democrats. The Democrat gets 31.5% of the vote from Democrats and none from the Republicans. Lisa Murkowski gets 22% of the vote from Republicans and 13.5% from the Democrats. So what happens in round 2 is the Patriot got 33% of the total vote. Lisa Murkowski gets 35.5% of the vote, and the Democrat gets 31.5% of the vote. So the Democrat gets eliminated. But guess what happens then? Their next highest choice is what their ballot gets cast for on the instant runoff. So their votes all go to Lisa Murkowski. Or as that operative put it, the coalition candidate. So on the instant runoff, the Rhino gets 67% of the vote, the Patriot gets 33% of the vote. That's how that works. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, folks. I meant to share my screen so you guys could see that math. Hold on. Let me pull it back up. Hold on. Here's how that math all works out, which is just what I just said. So the people on the Democrat side who vote for Lisa Murkowski over the Democrat, knowing that the Democrat doesn't really have a chance in Alaska, plus the minority of the Republican voters that support Lisa Murkowski, because the second choice of the Democrats is Lisa Murkowski. She captures their votes and goes on to win. So that's how that works. That's how that system works in Alaska. And because of the political skill of Lisa Murkowski's operatives, apart from getting caught on camera talking about this and admitting to it, not that that's going to reverse the outcome. You want to bet how much money was spent convincing voters that this is a more fair system, the instant runoff system? Lisa Murkowski was able to protect her seat that way. That's how that game was played. So that's how instant runoff voting works. Now, it's frustrating that we can't control what happens in other states, but that's just the way it is. You know, we've seen things in other states, and sometimes they're good results. And with J.D. Vance in Ohio and Blake Masters in Arizona, and some states things go all screwy. And we have to focus on what we can do where we are, because politics is intensely geographical, and no one's going to fix Michigan except for people in Michigan. So the thing I would say, other than, of course, being on alert for these kinds of schemes, now that you see how it's worked in Alaska, how the IRV system is designed to protect establishment people by giving the Democrats the opportunity to vote for them in any district where Democrats have the perception we can't win, but we can elect the rhinos over the Trumpsters. That's how that will work. That's the name of the game. But I would also submit to you that after what's happened in the primaries, where we've seen Democrats, and also in Wyoming with Liz Cheney, openly begging Democrats to vote in the Republican primaries, that it's about time, if Republicans take power next year, and let's pray they do, and work for that to happen, that it's time to really consider partisan voter registration and preventing Democrats from voting in Republican primaries. Now, it's important to clarify something here too, because a closed primary can mean different things. In some states, like Rhode Island, for example, you can also register as an independent. And in Rhode Island, an independent can vote in either party's primary as they choose, just like they can in Michigan now in any primary. Effectively, in Michigan right now, we are all unaffiliated. Anybody can vote in either party's primary. And voting absentee, fortunately, a lot of Democrats spoil their ballots and screw up and vote on both sides. I've seen that. When I did John Riley's recount, we saw lots of Democrat primary voters who, for no particular reason, except I guess they liked him so much, voted in the Republican primary for Mike Bouchard for sheriff, even though he was unopposed. And their ballots just simply didn't count because they voted on both sides. But if they voted in person, the machines are now, I don't think this was like this before Jocelyn Benson, the machines in 2020 were directed to reject any ballot with an overvote in the primary where they voted on both sides. So if you voted for both sides, the machine would go, you overvoted, try again. They wouldn't let that happen. But for absentee ballots, they couldn't control it because they couldn't look at the absentee ballots until before the election. Something else the Democrats are also pushing, by the way, to allow them to process absentee ballots early. So if you overvote, and by definition, Democrats are dumber, so they often overvote more than Republicans. The clerks can call up and say, "Hey, you overvoted. You want to try to vote again?" That can happen. So you have to have partisan voter registration, and in most partisan voter registration states, you can register as independent, but you can't vote in the party's primaries unless you are registered as a member of that party. Of course, you can change your party affiliation, but you can't do it when you walk in to vote. You have to do it early. And that's a big, big deterrent. So if we retake the governor's mansion and we keep the Republican majority, keep in the back of your mind, folks, this is important. Because we've seen how the Democrats try to meddle in our primaries. And they do more than that, too, In strong Republican districts, they run Democrats as Republicans. In low-interest races, we talked on a stream a few weeks ago about that county clerk, Ann Maneri from Midland, who was a Democrat clerk for years, and then she ran as a Republican for state rep. They'll do that all the time. And if they think they're in a seat where the Republican will win anyway, Democrats will direct their people to vote in Republican primaries. So, again, not the most urgent thing for us right now. The elections, we're already past our primary. But for an election reform, this is an important thing. Stopping Democrats from voting in Republican primaries. And it shouldn't be hard to explain. It shouldn't be hard to defend. Because if you're genuinely a Democrat, you shouldn't be voting in a Republican primary any more than if you're a genuine Republican, you shouldn't be voting in a Democrat primary. You shouldn't be pretending to be someone you're not for the sake of manipulating the election. Because the Republicans should pick the Republican nominees, the Democrats should pick the Democrat nominees. That's what fairness is. And lawmakers ought to be able to defend that. And we should be demanding that. Yeah, Doug says Oscoda County is strong Republican. Whoever wins the primary wins the general. They can't win, so they run Republican. Yeah. You know who most of all does that? Clerks. And of course, with school boards, Democrats it's a nonpartisan seat. They just pretend they're Republicans. No, don't have to say they're Republicans. It's a nonpartisan seat. But the teachers' unions know who the Democrats are, for sure. Renee says, let the red tidal wave begin. What we can't do is act like we have this in the bag in November. We have lots of work ahead. I completely agree, Renee. We have to run like we're 10 points behind. Because there can be an October surprise. In fact, if you've been following the news about the Gretchen Whitmer supposed kidnapping, the Fednapping trial that's been going on, lots of crazy stuff's been coming out about that. Check out Julie Kelly at American Greatness for all of the and on Twitter for all the latest that's coming out about that in the courts in the second trial. Remember, in the first trial, 4 of the defendants in that federal case, 2 of them were acquitted on an entrapment defense. And what's so significant about that is that the entrapment defense is saying, I did the thing, but I was entrapped by the government. That's a risky defense to make. It's like a self-defense argument. If you say I shot so and so in self-defense, you're admitting to doing the thing. You're eliminating your best defenses to make a risky defense. That the jury will say, okay, so you did do the thing, but you had to, or you did it in a lawful manner, and now you have the burden of showing that what you did was lawful. Same with entrapment. When the jury ruled that 2 of those 4 defendants were not guilty, they did that based on the entrapment defense. In other words, the jury unanimously agreed the FBI entrapped those 2 people. Think about that. The other 2 were a hung jury, which means there might have been just 1 juror holding out or something like that. They're being retried now. But the fact that the jury unanimously agreed that 2 of the 4 people accused were entrapped by the feds means the jury unanimously agreed it was an entrapment plot. And anyone with any common sense can see how it was politically motivated to influence the election in 2020. And that was exactly how it was played by Gretchen Whitmer and the national media and everybody else in the Democrat operative universe. So don't expect anything any less crazy to defend Gretchen Whitmer now if she's down in the polls. And that's going to come from Dana Nessel and Jocelyn Benson, too. They're going to hurl accusations, serious accusations. The voters have to be contacted early. They have to understand all of the major issues. They have to be reminded about how terrible and disgraceful the lockdowns were. They have to understand these ballot proposals that Whitmer and Nessel and Benson all support, and the gravity of those and how extreme and radical those are. And if you have any time to spare, informing the voters in your precinct about that Fed napping hoax, because the Detroit Free Press certainly won't do it. The media won't do it. Grassroots are absolutely 100% going to win this election or lose it for conservatives. And if you think you can just sit back and watch the red tsunami come, forget it. That's a recipe for failure. So anyway, that's all I have for tonight, folks. It's been a half hour. I want to do more of these short issue streams where we're not going for a full hour or more and just kind of focusing on one thing. Real quick, IBL33WJ3TLI says, new here, but what are your thoughts on Tudor Dixon? I think she's all right. I didn't vote for her in the primary, but she's far from being the level of rhino like Liz Cheney or Lisa Murkowski or Mitt Romney that would be more dangerous than Gretchen Whitmer getting a second term. So, look, I'm the first person to say don't vote for the lesser of two evils. I have not seen evidence to convince me that Tudor Dixon has fallen short of the conservative purity standards that some of the grassroots try to hold her to. I don't think that her being endorsed by the DeVosses rises to the level by itself of saying she would be a bad governor. I think the number one priority has to be driving someone like Gretchen Whitmer from power. Because if the Democrats get reelected and therefore get away with the most destructive, dangerous, unconstitutional assault on our civil liberties, the lockdowns, shutting down schools, restaurants, churches, all of these things, that has to be vetoed by voters. So, I don't think she's perfect. I wasn't happy with her opinion on university funding, but that's not the end of the world for me. And frankly, in most gubernatorial races, the Republican nominee has a lot bigger problems with them, like not being pro-Second Amendment or not being pro-life. Dixon put herself out there on those issues. She ran strongly to the right, not quite as far to the right as some of her opponents did, but I think she's perfectly satisfactory. She won't be perfect. No governor ever is. But I certainly wish her the best. And more importantly, I certainly wish Gretchen Whitmer the worst. And that means defeating her at the polls in November. So there you go. Kelly Fountain says vote straight Republican and no split tickets. Trust me, the Democrats have fallen in line and will not split the votes with write-ins of any sorts, no matter who you voted for in the primary. Need to vote for winners of it. Well, two things to that point, Kelly. First is also don't forget the nonpartisan races, the school boards and the judicial candidates. Those will take a lot of grassroots leadership to help the voters see who the patriots are in those races. And the other thing I would say too is, for all that I just said about Tudor Dixon, there are some Republicans in lower level seats I'm not so sure I would say that about. There are some Republicans that scored horribly on Rescue Michigan's legislative report card. For those, I would say, look, I'm not going to tell you to vote for the Democrat in those races, but don't work for the Republicans in those. Focus on either supporting candidates you truly do believe in or make your activism in the negative form. Attack the Democrats. You can attack all of them. Get all the Democrats on record on these ballot proposals for abortion and sterilization of minors or for removing every last safeguard for election fraud. And let the voters know in your precinct how dangerous and radical these Democrats are. But don't say something nice about a rhino. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. If you don't want to get involved in a general race where you've got a real rhino on the Republican side, work on some other race. Or just do things in the negative form and let the chips fall where they may. But don't get in the habit of supporting rhinos because it's the lesser of two evils. That's a recipe for failure. If you reward rhinos with your support, what ends up happening is you become no longer the grassroots leader telling the politicians what they must do, but the representative of the politicians telling the grassroots what they got to settle for. So don't do that. Larry Lager says, Lager Larry says, what is your opinion on the term limit petition on the ballot? Well, two things to that. One is I have mixed feelings about term limits. They have pluses and minuses. I'm not going to say term limits are great. I'm not going to say term limits are terrible. There are good and bad sides to them. On the plus side of term limits, you have more open races where we have more opportunities to elect patriots. On the minus side, you also have people that come into office who really have no clue what they're doing and never really learn. And as soon as they start to figure it out, they're gone. I remember I was talking to someone who worked in the legislature for a long time as a state rep and a state senator. And when the lockdowns happened and the legislature had no idea what to do about Gretchen Whitmer implementing tyranny, his attitude, what he said to me was, that's term limits. There's no institutional knowledge here anymore about what to do. So there's pluses and minuses to term limits. Now, that being said, these term limits in this proposal, I think, is disgraceful for a couple of reasons. One, the Chamber of Commerce wanted to do it anyway. And the reason they wanted to do it was because they thought it would lead to more entrenchment of rhinos, more of the professional politicians. And secondly, saving the Chamber of Commerce the millions of dollars it would have cost them to put it on the ballot was a giveaway to the Chamber of Commerce, who are not our friends. And finally, the proposal on term limits would allow a lot of lawmakers to serve a lot longer. Because, I mean, theoretically, in the term limits that we have now, a lawmaker can serve 14 years. They can serve 3 terms in the House and 2 terms in the Senate, and there they are for 14 years. But most of them never make it that far because there's a lot fewer seats in the Senate than seats in the House. So they only ever serve 3 in the House. Under this proposal, every state rep will now be able to serve 6 full terms in the House. So they can bide their time. They can serve a lot longer. They don't have to compete with each other for a Senate seat. And I'll tell you what else. In Lansing, there is a whole huge cadre of lobbyists who are former lawmakers. And I'll tell you, everybody who has ever been a lawmaker in the past lusts for that job back. They miss it like nothing else. Oh, sure, they make more money as lobbyists probably, but they miss having the ability to vote. They miss having constituents, lobbyists kissing their ass. They miss being in the catbird seat, being the person with the hand on the lever, voting yes or no. They miss that power immensely. And you will have lawmakers for years, former lawmakers, running for those old seats back once that opportunity is now in front of them. So I am no fan of that term limits amendment at all. But that's, again, not to say that term limits are universally bad or universally good. There's some other way to do it, but this was not the way at all. So, all right, folks, that's all I have for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. We will have, of course, our regular show on Sunday at 9 p.m. on our channels. We will be back on Rumble, as you may have heard from the previous streams. When I went on vacation, I didn't realize I didn't have my password for Rumble. And apparently the email link to it, I don't have access to it. I don't even know what it is. So we're not on Rumble, but I'll put all these streams up on Rumble when I get back in a couple of days. So thank you all for joining us. Lastly, let's just look and see where things are with Wyoming. 19% in. Harriet, is it HAY-guh-man? 65% of the vote. Liz Cheney, 30% of the vote. Anthony Bouchard, 3%, which means that's hilarious because that also means Democrats. Wait, no, that's the Republican primary. Is there a Democrat primary? There is a Democrat. Okay, so Democrats are. Wait, hold on. Let me see what the numbers are. Oh, look at this. All right, get ready for this, folks. So 19% reporting. Wait, hold on. Wyoming District 1. This is strange. I've never seen this before. The results are showing 19% reporting in the Republican primary, 7% reporting in the Democrat primary. Why on earth would that be? I was going to say the numbers are so disproportionate because Harriet HAY-guh-man has 16,000 votes. Oh, it just jumped a little bit. 21% in. versus 7% in on the Democrat side. Why there's a disparity between the Democrat and Republican results makes no sense to me at all. But anyway, 16,000 votes for Harriet Hageman, 9,667 votes for Liz Cheney. So a total of about 26,000 votes in the Republican primary total versus the Democrat primary. We only have a grand total of, looks like about 1,500 votes, which I don't know why we're seeing more results reported for Republicans than Democrats, but multiply the Democrat results by 3 and you're at 4,500 votes total in the Democrat primary. In Wyoming, 70-30. So that tells you Democrats are absolutely voting in the Republican primary for Liz Cheney, which underscores all the points I was making earlier about why we need to keep the Democrats in their own primaries. But Liz Cheney is getting blown out. Harriet Hageman is 24 points ahead, 16,000 to 10,000. So there you go. Cheers to another Rhino got beat. So a great night overall for America. So thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all have a great rest of your week. I know I will, other than probably the drive home. But there you go. All right, folks. Thanks again for all you do for liberty. Until next time, peace out.